The chamber was immense, stretching far above Elias Kane's head, walls glimmering with an alien metal that seemed alive. He was bound tightly at the wrists, his uniform torn in places from the capture, and every step he took echoed against the polished floor. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something else he couldn't identify, something sweet and sharp at the same time. He could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on him, a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and perhaps something darker. He had been warned about the Silithian Empire, the galaxy's most advanced and intimidating civilization. Their ships could travel faster than anything humanity had, their soldiers disciplined beyond belief and their rulers known to be merciless. Yet here he was, standing before their throne, every nerve alert, every thought racing. He had trained for moments like this, though no simulation had truly prepared him for the alien court's strange, suffocating grandeur. At the center of the room sat Queen Lysera, perched on a throne that seemed grown rather than built, organic curves stretching like the body of some enormous creature. Her skin shimmered faintly under the alien lights, a translucent gold that revealed glimpses of strange veins beneath. Her eyes were a pale violet, large and luminescent, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made him straighten involuntarily. For a moment, Elias wondered if he could read her thoughts through her gaze alone. The court around her was silent, save for the faint hum of hovering devices that floated near the ceiling, projecting light patterns that danced across the walls. Alien nobles, each more ornate and different than the last, watched with rigid posture, their multi-limbed forms folded in complex ways that Elias could not fully understand. Some whispered in a language he could not translate, yet the tone carried a mix of doubt and amazement. Elias's hands strained slightly in the bindings, but he refused to let panic show. He had faced worse than fear. He had faced hopelessness, and he knew the difference. He inhaled deeply, letting the cold air fill his lungs, steadying himself. Captivity did not mean defeat, not yet. If he played his cards carefully, he could turn this moment, maybe even plant the first seeds of respect for humanity in this alien court. The queen did not speak. She simply leaned forward slightly, observing him with careful patience. The silence stretched, heavy and deliberate. Elias's mind raced. Any wrong word could be his undoing, yet silence would only feed their assumption that humans were weak, easily cowed. He had to show them the strength that humanity carried, the courage, the ingenuity, the will that had allowed them to survive on a fragile planet in a dangerous galaxy. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm, measured, and surprisingly steady. "I am Elias Kane, commander of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. I have faced your patrols in the outer sectors, and though I was captured today, I am not afraid. Humanity does not surrender its mind or its purpose even when bound." A ripple passed through the court, subtle but noticeable. Aliens turned slightly, their heads tilting, some with visible surprise. Elias pressed on, choosing his words carefully. "You see, humans have endured countless wars, countless threats to our survival, and yet we continue. We explore, we create, and we find solutions where others see only obstacles. That is who we are. That is what you have before you today. Not just a soldier, but a representative of a species that refuses to yield to fear or intimidation." The queen's gaze did not waver. If anything, it sharpened, as though she was weighing his words, testing them against a standard he could not understand. Elias felt a spark of hope. There was curiosity there, something beyond protocol and custom, something personal. A small, hovering device moved closer, projecting holographic images of human history, brief flashes of scientific achievements, explorations, and acts of courage. Elias recognized the intention. The Silithians wanted context, wanted to understand if his words had truth behind them. He straightened, lifting his chin, and allowed his calm confidence to radiate. He would not flinch. "You see," he continued, "humans have survived countless catastrophes not because we are the strongest, but because we adapt, we learn, we empathize. We make decisions that honor not just ourselves, but others. We have built civilizations from scratch, solved problems thought impossible, and stood firm when entire systems tried to push us under. This is the essence of humanity, and I speak for all of us here today." The chamber remained silent, yet the atmosphere had changed. There was tension, yes, but also a flicker of admiration, subtle but unmistakable. Even some of the court's most stern figures leaned slightly closer, observing him more intently. He had their attention, if not yet their full respect. Elias allowed himself a moment to notice the queen's posture. Lysara had shifted slightly forward on her throne, an almost imperceptible sign of engagement. He had read about alien body language, studied it for months before this mission, and he recognized curiosity when he saw it, even in a species so alien to humans. He spoke again, softer this time, a human trying not to offend but to resonate. I do not stand here seeking mercy or special treatment. I stand here so that you may see the truth of my people. Humans are not weak. We are not easily controlled. We are not simple. If you wish to understand what makes us formidable, do not look at our weapons or our ships. Look at our minds, our hearts, and our choices. The queen's eyes softened fractionally, her multifaceted gaze flickering with something like surprise. Some of the nobles whispered to each other, their voices hushed yet sharp, debating among themselves the audacity of this human. Elias could not understand the words, but their tone told him enough. His words were stirring something unexpected, a recognition that humans might not be easily categorized. One of the hovering devices displayed a map of recent conflicts at the edge of Silithian space, highlighting human tactical decisions that had outmaneuvered far larger forces. Elias did not need the images. He knew the outcomes, but he allowed them to linger. Let them see the evidence of human thought in action. Let them see that bravery and ingenuity often outshine sheer size or technology. The queen finally spoke, her voice a soft hum that echoed slightly in the vast chamber. You speak boldly, human, yet the court will not forgive arrogance without proof. Show me that your words are more than sound. Elias nodded slightly, understanding immediately. Proof was not a weapon or a display of strength. It was intellect, strategy, and principle. He did not flinch. He would show them, not through violence, but through human ingenuity. I am ready, Your Majesty, he said, keeping his voice steady. I will answer any challenge, solve any problem, and demonstrate why humanity deserves consideration, not contempt. For a moment, the chamber seemed to hold its breath. The alien nobles shifted uneasily, sensing that something unprecedented was unfolding. The queen's gaze lingered on him longer than etiquette required, her hand flexing slightly in what might have been impatience or fascination. Elias did not know, nor did he care to guess. He focused on what he could control, his composure, his mind, and his voice. The tension was thick, but for the first time since his capture, Elias felt a surge of confidence. Humanity had faced the impossible before, and now, before the throne of a queen who could crush worlds, he had the chance to show why humans were extraordinary. Not through fear, not through force, but through thought, courage, and principle, and somewhere in the quiet, deep within the pale violet eyes of Queen Lysara, a small, almost imperceptible signal blinked. She had noticed. She had heard. And she would remember. The chamber was still, the air thick with expectation. The queen had signaled the court to wait, her presence alone commanding silence. Elias Kane remained bound, but the tension had shifted. It was no longer fear alone that filled the room. It was curiosity. The Silithians were watching him closely, and for the first time since his capture, Elias sensed an opportunity. Queen Lysara rose slightly from her throne, her hands folding delicately in front of her, and spoke in a tone that carried both authority and subtle intrigue. You speak of humanity as if we do not already know the galaxy is full of threats. Tell me, human, what makes your species exceptional? Why should I consider your people worthy of respect? Elias lifted his chin, keeping his gaze steady. He knew the queen was testing him, measuring not just what he said but how he said it. He needed to appeal to reason, yet also to values the Silithians might not have fully understood. Your Majesty, he began, humans are adaptable. We survive not because we are the largest or the strongest, but because we learn. Every challenge we face teaches us something new. Every failure is a lesson. And through this, we become stronger, smarter, more capable. A murmur ran through the nobles. Elias could not understand the words, but he felt the subtle shift in energy, curiosity replacing doubt, admiration mingling with caution. The queen's eyes never left him, and in them, he saw the faintest spark of recognition, as if she were reconsidering everything she thought she knew about humans. Adaptable, she said slowly. And yet the galaxy has many species that adapt. What separates humans from the rest? Elias smiled faintly, aware that this question was the heart of his opportunity. "We choose," he said simply. "Not instinctively, not by command, but by reason and conscience. We weigh consequences, consider others, and take responsibility. A human will risk everything for what is right, even if it means standing alone. That is what makes us extraordinary. That is why you see in me not just a soldier, but a representative of a species that will never be easily dismissed." The queen leaned forward slightly, her hands resting on the arms of her throne. Her posture, though elegant, betrayed genuine curiosity. She was listening, not merely hearing, but trying to understand, to measure the truth of his words against her vast knowledge of the galaxy. A device hovered near her, projecting images of human history. Cities built from barren lands, ships that explored the stars, and people collaborating to overcome natural disasters. Elias allowed the images to play without interruption. He knew the Silithians were visual beings, and seeing proof of human ingenuity would strengthen his argument. "You speak well," the queen said after a pause. "Yet words alone are not enough. Let us see if your actions can match your claims. Humanity is bold, yes, but boldness alone is insufficient. Solve a challenge for me, and perhaps I will believe in your people." Elias nodded slightly, understanding immediately. The challenge would not be violence or intimidation, it would be intellect, strategy, and moral reasoning. He could do this. Humans were problem solvers, thinkers, and negotiators. He could demonstrate that strength lay in the mind as much as in the body. The queen gestured with one delicate hand, and a new projection appeared in the air. A complex grid of symbols and moving points, shifting in a way that seemed random to untrained eyes. "This is a model of a recent conflict in the outer sectors," she explained. A smaller force faced a larger one. The outcome seemed inevitable. What solution would your species have proposed to change the result? Elias studied the projection, his mind calculating patterns, probabilities, and options. He spoke carefully, laying out a plan that relied on strategy, deception, and foresight rather than brute force. He explained how humans would have used terrain, diversionary tactics, and coordinated strikes to achieve a favorable outcome without unnecessary loss. As he spoke, the queen's violet eyes narrowed slightly, a sign that she was following every detail. The nobles shifted again, whispering among themselves, but this time their tone carried respect. Elias felt a surge of satisfaction. He was not only demonstrating human ingenuity, he was making them see it, understand it, and perhaps most importantly, question their assumptions about a species they had long considered inferior. When he finished, the queen was silent for a long moment, her gaze lingering on him in a way that made the room feel impossibly still. Then she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "You have proposed a solution that requires foresight, courage, and a willingness to risk the uncertain. These are traits I did not expect from a human. Tell me, Commander Kane, are all humans like this?" Elias allowed himself a small, confident smile. "Many are, Your Majesty. We are capable of great mistakes, yes, but also of great triumphs. What you see in me is not exceptional. It is the essence of humanity." The court remained silent, but the energy had shifted completely. Where there had once been tension and suspicion, there was now intrigue and admiration. Even the hovering devices seemed to hum differently, as if recording more than just images and data. They were capturing the presence of a species that refused to be underestimated. The queen tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You speak of responsibility, yet your people are often at odds with each other. How can I trust that this courage and reasoning are consistent, not isolated to a single individual?" Elias considered the question carefully. He could have deflected, but honesty would serve him better. "Humans are imperfect, Your Majesty. That is true. But we are aware of our imperfections, and we strive to overcome them. Our failures teach us lessons. Our debates refine our ideas. And our cooperation allows us to achieve what would be impossible alone. Even when we falter, we learn and we adapt." A ripple of approval passed through the nobles. Elias could not understand the words, but he could see the expressions, some furrowed brows relaxing, some heads nodding slightly, others exchanging glances of surprised respect. The Queen's gaze softened further, and for the first time she leaned forward fully, resting her hands on her knees as she examined him like one would a rare artifact. "You speak with confidence and humility," she said. "Boldness tempered with reason is rare, even among the Scythians. I am intrigued, human, but curiosity alone does not make trust. How would your people act if faced with a choice that could save many lives but put themselves at great risk?" Elias's mind raced briefly, but he answered without hesitation. "We choose to act. Self-preservation is natural, but humans recognize that the greater good is worth sacrifice. We understand the cost of inaction, and we are willing to bear risks to protect what matters. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite it. That is humanity in its finest form." The Queen remained silent, but her posture suggested a subtle shift. She was no longer merely judging him. She was considering the possibilities that humans presented. Elias had planted a seed of respect, of recognition, that could grow into understanding, even admiration. Then the Queen's voice rang out, cutting through the whispers of the court. "Commander Kane, you have spoken well and shown thoughtfulness that surpasses expectation. I will not make decisions lightly, but you have proven that humans are not merely another species to be catalogued and ignored. Your words and insight demand attention, and perhaps in time consideration." Elias allowed himself a small nod. The bindings at his wrists still held him, but the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. He had not yet won freedom, nor had he gained full trust, but he had achieved something more important. He had made them see him and through him see humanity, in a way that no one had before. The Queen's eyes lingered on him, and he felt something in them that transcended protocol. A flicker of recognition, of curiosity, even of respect. The court murmured quietly among themselves, the energy in the chamber charged with a new dynamic. Elias knew that the days ahead would demand more, proof through action, demonstration of skill, and unwavering composure. But he also knew that this first victory had been won not through force, but through thought, courage, and the human spirit. For the first time since capture, Elias felt a quiet confidence. Humanity had faced impossible odds before. Here, in the heart of an alien empire, before a queen who could decide the fate of worlds, he had begun to show why humans were extraordinary, and somewhere in the flicker of violet eyes and subtle motions of the court, he sensed that they were beginning to understand, to respect, and perhaps even to fear the possibilities that humanity carried. The chamber felt quieter than before, though the eyes of the court still followed Elias Kane with unrelenting attention. Queen Lysara remained on her throne, her posture elegant yet deliberate, as if every movement had been measured for centuries. Elias, still bound at the wrists, met her gaze with steady calm. He knew the moment for words alone had passed. Now she wanted proof, an action that could show that humanity's claims were more than speeches and theories. The Queen's voice resonated softly through the hall. "Commander Kane, words are powerful, but thought alone cannot convince the court. You have described humanity's ingenuity, its courage, and its moral strength. Now I challenge you to demonstrate it. Solve this problem for me, and perhaps your people will be seen in a new light." A projection appeared in the air between them. A network of glowing points stretched across the holographic field, shifting and changing like constellations in motion. Each point represented a Scythian outpost, a fleet in motion, and a potential threat. The simulation was a complex conflict scenario in the outer sectors, one that had baffled even the most skilled Scythian strategists. Elias studied the display intently, his mind scanning patterns, probabilities, and potential outcomes. The projection moved with a speed and precision that was almost impossible to follow, yet he had trained for moments like this. It was not fear that guided him, it was calculation, creativity, and a clear understanding of risk and reward. "You see," the Queen said, her eyes fixed on him. "A smaller force is at a severe disadvantage. Conventional tactics have failed. You must find a way to achieve victory without overwhelming numbers, without reckless sacrifice. What would your species do?" Elias took a deep breath. "Your Majesty, I will rely on what humans do best, coordination, creativity, and adaptability. We will not confront this force head-on where numbers dominate. Instead, we will analyze their patterns, predict their movements, and strike where they least expect. We will use their assumptions against them. He pointed to several clusters in the projection. These outposts are interconnected, but their communication relies on a central relay point. If we can disrupt that relay without being detected, we can isolate smaller units, neutralize them one by one, and force the larger fleet into confusion. A smaller human force could succeed where a larger one might fail, the court murmured among themselves. Elias could not understand their words, but the tone had shifted from doubt to cautious interest. Even some of the nobles leaned slightly closer, following his logic with visible curiosity. He continued, detailing his strategy with clear reasoning. Diversionary tactics will draw attention away from the main objective. Decoys, holographic projections, and controlled misinformation can manipulate their perception. While they focus on what appears to be the threat, the real operation can proceed undetected. Humans excel at using minimal resources for maximum effect, relying on intelligence rather than sheer strength. The Queen's violet eyes narrowed slightly, but there was a glimmer of approval in her gaze. "And the risk to your forces?" she asked. Elias spoke without hesitation, calculated and minimal. No strategy is without risk, but humans understand that careful planning and cooperation reduce unnecessary loss. We value life, our own and others, and we act to protect it whenever possible. The balance between boldness and caution defines our approach. The court was silent, waiting, watching. Elias could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on him, yet he remained composed. He knew this was more than a test of strategy. It was a test of character, of how humans could respond under pressure, and how they approached problems not just logically but morally. One of the floating devices projected a simulated outcome based on his plan. The points on the holographic field moved as he described, mimicking the tactics he had outlined. The smaller fleet, guided by human reasoning, successfully navigated the hazards, avoided unnecessary conflict, and achieved the objective with minimal losses. Queen Lysera's hand flexed slightly, her pale fingers resting on the arm of her throne. "You have presented a solution that requires foresight, discipline, and cooperation. It is not brute force, yet it achieves results. How can I be certain this reflects humanity as a whole, and not the skill of one individual?" Elias considered her question carefully. "Your Majesty, humans are diverse, yes, and not all are skilled in the same way. But we are capable of teaching, cooperating, and learning from each other. Strategy, creativity, and courage are not limited to a single human. They can be found in many when the situation demands. This is why humanity thrives even under the most challenging circumstances." A subtle shift passed through the court. Heads tilted slightly, whispers exchanged in hurried tones, and the energy in the chamber changed. Where once there had been doubt and suspicion, now there was respect tempered with cautious curiosity. The Queen's posture suggested interest rather than judgment, and for the first time, Elias sensed that his actions had begun to influence the perception of his species. "You have demonstrated more than strategy," the Queen said, her voice soft but commanding. "You have shown insight into morality, courage, and adaptability. Traits that our scholars have debated but rarely seen in practice. Perhaps humanity is more than we believed." Elias allowed himself a small nod, understanding that her words were significant. The Silithians were a civilization that valued reason, discipline, and careful judgment. To have earned even a fraction of their respect was remarkable, yet he knew the challenge was not over. They were still captives in their court, and the Queen's ultimate decision could affect not only him but his people across the stars. The Queen leaned forward slightly, her violet eyes studying him. "Commander Kane, you have impressed me with thought, courage, and insight. Yet understanding does not equal trust. Humanity's potential is clear, but can your people act when decisions weigh heavily against them? Can they choose wisely when lives are at stake?" Elias held her gaze steadily. "Yes, Your Majesty. Humans act even under uncertainty. We weigh our options, we consider consequences, and we make choices guided by reason and conscience. Fear does not dictate our actions, responsibility does. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That is why humanity survives, grows, and prospers." The Queen studied him silently, her eyes reflecting light in patterns that Elias could not fully interpret. For a long moment, nothing moved except the faint hum of the hovering devices. Then slowly she straightened, a subtle gesture that shifted the energy in the chamber. The nobles around her exchanged glances, some uncertain, some intrigued, as if sensing that something unprecedented was unfolding. "You have presented a plan that combines intellect, foresight, and moral reasoning," Lysera said finally, "and you speak of courage and responsibility in ways that resonate beyond your species. Humans may yet be more remarkable than our scholars imagined. For this demonstration you have earned a measure of respect, though it is not yet complete. The court will judge further in time, but you have taken a significant step forward." Elias felt a quiet surge of satisfaction. He remained bound, yes, but the weight he carried had lessened. The Cilithians were beginning to see him not merely as a prisoner, but as a representative of a people capable of intellect, creativity, and courage. That recognition was priceless. He straightened slightly, lifting his chin. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am honored that my actions could reflect the values of humanity. I hope this is only the beginning of understanding between our species." The Queen regarded him for a long moment, then nodded subtly. "Perhaps it is. Time will reveal the full measure of your people, Commander Kane. For now you have shown that humans are not to be underestimated. That alone is a beginning." A ripple passed through the court. Elias could feel it in the energy of the room. A new awareness, a quiet admiration. The nobles no longer saw a helpless human. They saw a mind capable of strategy, a spirit capable of courage, and a species worthy of consideration. As the projection faded, the Queen leaned back, her hands folding gracefully before her. "Rest, human. Your mind is sharp, and sharp minds require calm as well as focus. Tomorrow we shall see how humans act in more complex circumstances. For now, you have demonstrated the essence of your species, and that is no small accomplishment." Elias allowed himself a brief moment to relax. His wrists still ached from the bindings, his uniform was torn, and he remained in the heart of a civilization far more advanced than his own. Yet in that moment he felt a quiet triumph. He had not yet won freedom, nor had he achieved full trust, but he had begun to turn the perception of humanity in the Cilithian court. That was a victory in itself. The Queen's gaze lingered on him a moment longer, and in that look, Elias sensed something he had not expected: recognition, curiosity, and perhaps even a hint of respect. Humanity had faced impossible odds before. Here, in the court of an alien queen who could decide the fate of worlds, they had begun to prove their worth, not through violence, not through force, but through thought, courage, and unwavering principle. And somewhere in that silent acknowledgement, Elias knew that the path forward, though fraught with challenges, held the possibility of something extraordinary, a recognition of humanity in a galaxy that had long underestimated them. The chamber was quiet, but the air was heavy with anticipation. The court had gathered once more, the nobles and advisors watching closely, their curiosity now mixed with cautious admiration. Elias Kane stood in the center, still bound at the wrists, but his posture was firm, his gaze steady. He had passed the first tests of words and intellect. Now the Queen would judge not only him but the human species he represented. Queen Lysera remained seated upon her throne, her violet eyes fixed on him, radiating authority and interest. She had seen his courage, his reasoning, and his moral insight. The court had witnessed his strategies and solutions to impossible challenges. Yet now silence stretched across the chamber as she rose from her throne, her presence commanding attention in a way that made even the floating devices seem to pause. "You have spoken of humanity and demonstrated your understanding of strategy, morality, and courage," the Queen said. Her voice was calm, yet every word carried the weight of her authority. But words and projections alone cannot reveal the full measure of a species. Actions speak louder than theory. Show me, human, what it means to lead, to inspire, and to represent your people in the face of scrutiny. Elias met her gaze without hesitation. He had anticipated this moment. Leadership was not measured by rank or strength, but by composure, insight, and the ability to inspire trust. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady, "I have stood before your court and spoken of humanity's values. I have demonstrated our intellect and judgment. If my actions can represent my people, I will act as their voice, their example and their advocate in this chamber and before your empire." The Queen tilted her head slightly, a gesture that seemed to signal both interest and a test. The nobles watched him closely, their multi-limbed forms shifting subtly as if anticipating the unfolding events. Elias felt no fear, only focus. Humanity's strength had always been in perseverance and courage under pressure, and in the ability to face impossible odds without surrendering one's principles. You speak boldly, human and with measured humility, Lysera said. Yet humility alone does not earn respect. How will you convince this court that humans are not merely capable of thought, but also worthy of trust and honor? Elias took a deep breath, letting his mind clear. Your Majesty, trust is earned not through words alone, but through understanding, integrity, and courage. Humans are imperfect, yet we recognize our flaws and strive to improve. We make decisions guided by reason, empathy, and responsibility. These qualities define us, and I stand here today to represent them not as an individual, but as a symbol of humanity's potential. The Queen's violet eyes studied him carefully, her expression unreadable to anyone but Elias. The tension in the chamber was palpable. Whispers rippled through the court, some skeptical, some admiring. Even the floating devices seemed to hum differently, projecting light in patterns that mirrored the court's energy. Elias could feel the subtle shift. Curiosity was now paired with recognition, and respect was beginning to take root. Then show me, Lysera said softly. Yet every word echoed across the chamber. That humanity's potential is real. Convince this court that humans are worthy of consideration, and you may yet change how your species is seen in this empire. Elias nodded slightly. He knew that the test was no longer about strategy alone or moral reasoning. It was about presence, composure, and demonstrating leadership under observation. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, and began to speak. His words deliberate, clear, and resonant. Members of this court, I am not here to argue for superiority. I am here to demonstrate that humanity is capable of thought, courage, and principled action. We have survived countless challenges, built civilizations from barren lands, and reached for the stars despite every obstacle. Our strength lies not in size, speed, or brute force, but in our capacity to think, to learn, to adapt, and to act with responsibility. That is the essence of humanity. That is what I bring before you today. A hush fell over the chamber. The nobles leaned forward slightly, and the Queen's gaze remained locked on him. Elias could feel the weight of centuries of tradition, power, and expectation pressing down, yet he did not flinch. Humanity had faced far greater pressures: war, natural disaster, and the unknown, and had emerged not only alive but stronger. Courage, he continued, is not the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. Wisdom is not knowledge alone but the ability to apply it justly. Cooperation is not submission, but the recognition that greater goals require shared effort. These are human traits. I stand before you bound in body yet free in mind and spirit, to show that our people are capable of more than survival. We are capable of honor, creativity, and inspiring change even in worlds not our own. Queen Lysera's expression softened slightly. The court shifted, a subtle energy flowing through the nobles and advisors. Elias sensed that his words were resonating, not merely as speech, but as proof of humanity's unique capacity to inspire through reason and integrity. He pressed on, his voice steady, carrying the conviction of a species determined to be recognized. Your Majesty, you have asked for demonstration, and I offer not only plans and solutions, but the principles that guide us, the same courage, wisdom, and creativity that allowed humans to navigate challenges in our own worlds are present in every one of us. I stand here as a living example of those traits. Judge me, and in doing so, consider my people. We do not seek dominion, only respect. We do not boast of strength, only of perseverance. And we do not ask for trust lightly. We earn it through action and principle. The chamber remained silent, the weight of his words settling over the audience like a wave. For the first time, Elias felt a shift that went beyond observation. He could see recognition in the eyes of the nobles, and most importantly, he could see it in the Queen. Queen Lysera rose fully from her throne, a movement so graceful it seemed to command the entire chamber to stillness. The subtle hum of the hovering devices seemed to pause, as if even the machinery acknowledged the significance of the moment. Every noble and advisor turned toward her, watching as the alien Queen faced Elias not from a seat of judgment alone, but as one who sought to understand and honor what stood before her. You speak of principles, courage, and the value of thought, she said, her voice steady and clear. And you have demonstrated insight, ingenuity, and the capacity to act with wisdom under scrutiny. It is rare that any individual, let alone a representative of an unfamiliar species, can command such attention and respect. Elias remained composed, holding her gaze. He did not speak, allowing the queen to continue, knowing that the moment was not for words alone, but for recognition of what had been demonstrated. I have observed your reasoning, your strategies, and your courage, Lysera said. You have shown that humanity possesses qualities that are extraordinary, and that these qualities are not isolated but inherent, capable of being found across your species when circumstances demand. You have earned the court's attention, and you have earned my respect. A ripple passed through the chamber. The nobles straightened, whispers turning into gestures of acknowledgement. Some bowed subtly, others inclined their heads. Elias could feel the energy shift from cautious evaluation to genuine recognition. Humanity was no longer a curiosity or a subject of speculation. It was a species to be considered seriously, respected and valued. The queen stepped down from her throne, moving closer to the center of the chamber. Her presence filled the space not with threat but with acknowledgement. She extended a hand, a gesture so deliberate that it spoke volumes in alien culture. Elias looked at her, then at the court, and for the first time he realized that the bindings on his wrists no longer mattered. His body might still be restrained, but in spirit and in principle he stood free. You have stood before my throne and spoken with clarity, reason and courage, Lysera said. You have demonstrated the essence of your species. Today I honor that. Today, humanity is seen not as a subject to be catalogued or judged, but as a people worthy of respect and consideration. Elias felt a quiet surge of triumph. His heart remained steady, but inside a sense of pride and relief flowed through him. He had achieved more than survival. He had transformed perception not through force but through intellect, courage, and principle. He had shown that humans could stand even when bound, and inspire change through their values alone. The queen's violet eyes lingered on him, reflecting light and recognition. She returned to her throne slowly, yet the gesture had been made. The court followed her lead, acknowledging what had been earned. And Elias knew that this moment would be remembered not as a mere demonstration of strategy, but as a turning point in how humans were perceived across the Silithian Empire. Rest, Commander Kane, Lysera said at last. Your mind has been and your presence has been commanding. Evident, and I shall consider further how your species may interact with our empire. For now you have shown the value of intellect, courage, and principle. That is a triumph greater than any victory on a battlefield. Elias nodded, a calm smile forming. He felt the weight of responsibility ease slightly, replaced by the satisfaction of knowing that he had not only represented himself, but his entire species with honor. Humanity had been seen, recognized, and respected, and the ripple of that acknowledgement would